All right, everybody, thanks for joining in. This episode, we are jumping back to the mid-'80s and kind of going off of the theme of the Ghoulies 2 episode that we did, and we're doing another Empire Pictures movie this episode. And this particular movie, I think, really goes back to the old school, you know, when you talk about like Spielberg movies or some of the earlier Carpenter movies, James Cameron movies and stuff, where you can always kind of watch a movie and you're like, oh, hey, yep, that's a John Carpenter movie or that's a Steven Spielberg movie. But this one you could always kind of, back in the old Empire days, you could kind of always see that even though Charles Band didn't direct this movie, you could kind of tell, like, oh, yeah, this is a movie that the Band family had its name all over. And we're talking about 1986's TerrorVision.
You know, it's funny because I remember when you started talking about Charles Band, and I didn't know who he was, and then you showed me how he was connected to the Puppet Master films. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So, and then you see all those, like, different films that came, like, in the late 80s into the 90s, the Puppet Master, and a few other ones I can't think of them off the top of my head. But I never knew he was so entrenched in so many different films, like, you know, going back even to 78 with, what's it called, Tourist Trap. I didn't know that was related to this, and turns out it was. And so, like, all of these films and Ghoulies, I had no idea what had anything to do with Charles Band. So it's kind of interesting to see, like, this connection with all these films that, you know, I had some sort of recollection of, you know, growing up. And, yeah, it all goes back to this Empire and all that stuff. And that speaks of this film that we're talking about now.
It is nuts. I memean, you could... we kind of did I did a Charles Band episode, I think, without you one time, but yeah, I mean, you can even really relate Charles Band all the way back to really Halloween. I mean, Charles Band started Meta back in the day, which, you know, the Meta film distribution company eventually became Media.
Really?
And then,
I didn't know that.
You know, and of course, Halloween was released on Media way, way back in the day. You know, if you can get a copy of the original, like the yellow Media Halloween tape, well, I mean, some people are like, oh, it's worth $1,000, but they typically sell for, I think, like $200 or $300 on eBay when they do sell. But yeah, Charles Band it's crazy. Like, if you see him nowadays and you see some of the stuff that, like, Full Moon's putting out now, I mean, it's all like sleazeball stuff. I mean, it's not, you know, all this old school, just gore. I mean, this movie's kind of a scuzzy movie a little bit. But, you know, when you see, like, some of the stuff that Full Moon puts out now, you know, it's just like all just like tits and ass, you know, that's all it is pretty much. You know, there's really not much of a horror element to most of the stuff at all anymore, but...
So Empire turned into Full Moon?
Yeah, well, Empire folded in the late 80s, and then when that happened, because Puppet Master was originally going to be an Empire movie, but then Empire went under, and then Puppet Master came out, and that was like the first Full Moon movie.
Ah, okay, and that's when everything kind of changed.
Yep.
Very interesting, okay.
So yeah,
I had no idea what the... how that all worked out. Okay, so then it turned into Full Moon, and Full Moon is like, you know, everything we see now, and like you go to the conventions and
right,
all the puppet map. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, back in the day, because in Puppet Master, I think the original Puppet Master, I think, got a real short theater run, but then after that, pretty much everything was straight to video, which, I mean, makes sense. You know, it was like, when was that, 88, 89, something like that, right around that time frame. So, you know, that was like way back in you know, and which was probably a big part of the reason why, like, studios like Empire International Pictures went under and stuff because, there's no way you can compete with like Universal and MGM and, all these big time studios putting out movies, massive, whatever 3,000 theater runs and stuff. And you have you have the budget to get your movie out on 12 screens.
Right.
To where, then you go into the direct to video market, and it's even got to be cheaper now. I mean, I know it's got to be now, but I mean, even then when it was like direct to video, man, that had to have. I should really dig into that at some point and see like how the video distribution market like just boomed and how many different. I mean, I know there's a ton of them. I mean, hell, I have 20 shirts hanging up, but of different video distribution companies back in the day. But man, you had like Vestron and Media and all of those, Thorn, all of those, just popped up in the late 80s. How many of those just went away? I wonder, what I would really be curious about is how many of those that popped up in the late 80s and kind of went away that you never hear of anymore, if they rolled into something different, or did somebody else absorb them? Or are they still around, or is it like a bunch of just different Charles Band stories out there? Is it one guy that was like, oh, cool, I'm going to start Vestron up. Oh, that didn't work out. All right, I'm going to start this up. Yeah, that didn't work out. Oh, I'm going to do this now.
Interesting.
Yeah. But
I'm looking at their filmography here. Yep. It looks like Reanimator's probably their best, most well known, other than the Ghoulies the first two Ghoulies films. It looks like.
Oh yeah, for Empire. Yep.
Yeah. Then another one I see on their list here, Rawhead Rex. That's another one. I don't know if you ever saw that one. That was one of those mom and pop rentals for me. Yeah,
I've seen it. It's been a while since I've seen it, but
then there's Dolls from 1987.
Yep.
Do you remember that one?
Dolls, Trancers, all those.
Trancers, I don't remember. Interesting. Yeah, a lot of them. Robot Jocks.
Yep.
Weird. That was more of a mainstream thing, huh?
Yeah, and and that's like what I was saying before. When you get into like some of these movies, maybe a little bit outside of Reanimator, even though Reanimator kind of has that feel to it. You can throw any of these on and you can definitely tell, like, this movie's a prime example of that. You're like, oh yeah, this is a Empire Pictures movie for sure. Puppet Master has that same feel a little bit to it. I mean, this movie is complete and utter 80s cheese fest. Like I was telling my wife yesterday when we were watching it, we've talked about before how you can always tell when a movie is made, usually by different things in the movie. This movie is one of those movies that somebody is going to find like in the year 5000, and then all of a sudden that's what the 1980s are going to be based on, is this movie. Because I mean, this movie is just 80s galore. I mean,
oh my gosh,
outside of what was the guy's name that made all of those Brat Pack movies, 16 Candles?
John Hughes.
John Hughes, yeah. So it's going to be John Hughes movies, and TerrorVision is what's going to define the 1980s, 3,000 years from now.
Yeah, that's so funny. Like, we had in this film, we have what I saw in terms of like 80s tropes or 80s cliche type things was we've had the headbanger dude, which was the guy, I think his name was OD.
Yep.
And he was like the long hair, wearing the Wasp T-shirt. I think there was a Wasp song even in this. Then there was his girlfriend, and she was like a Cyndi Lauper clone. And then there was the kid, her brother, who was, I think, what year did this film come out again?
1986.
Okay, then that makes sense, because the biggest, machine gun film probably ever made in terms of mainstream film was Rambo: First Blood Part 2, which came out in 1985. So I was thinking that was probably Rambo influenced why they had so many machine guns in this film. The monster and the special effects that screamed 80s. That was like all over the place 80s.
Yeah, the only thing that this movie was missing that would make it a complete and utter '80s movie is there was no references to cocaine anywhere in this movie.
No, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't remember any cocaine references.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was complete and utter '80s everything. Yeah, you had the swingers. You had, the guy was so proud of his satellite that he had hooked up.
Oh, the satellites, that's right.
And that's another '80s thing. Was not only the satellite TV, but he had the state-of-the-art entertainment system at his house.
Oh, too funny.
If you've never seen TerrorVision, this is one of those movies that if you're above a certain age, you remember seeing the box all the time at the mom and pop store. And nowadays it's kind of one of those movies that in the VHS world, it's one of those movies that a lot of people want to find and kind of complete their own. The movies I remember from the video store collection. And I unfortunately do not own this on VHS, but I would love to get it on VHS.
Really? I thought for sure this would have been in your collection.
No, I've looked for it a few times, but not that it's horribly expensive, but it's a little more than what I want to pay for it, like eBay prices go.
Right.
So, I mean, if I see it for somewhere for a decent price, I'll definitely pick it up. But, man, if you've never seen TerrorVision and you're a fan of 80s stuff at all, you definitely got to go check this one out. I mean, it is cheesy. It is, the movie itself is stupid as hell. The storyline's not the best. The writing is pretty horrible. The acting is pretty bad. I mean,
pretty terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of terrible things to this movie, but at the same time, when you add all those up, it makes one hell of a great 80s movie. I mean, it's completely enjoyable, and it's one of those things that we say time and time again. But this is definitely a great beer and popcorn movie. This is something you go and get your old style and your great value bag of popcorn, and man, you are set.
Yeah, the thing about this film is that I got to go back to the box art. Satellite with the eyeball in it. That box was sitting on every single mom and pop video store that I remember going to as a kid. Never saw this film as a kid. Never saw any of it. I had nothing. Never watched it at all. And so it was kind of cool to, kind of finally get to watch this, because it was something, again, that was like in the back of my mind for so long, just because of, again, the cover art. And that again shows how powerful that art was back in the day, that we're still talking about it now.
Yeah, I always remember the cover art. This is one of those movies too where every time you can just see like part of it and you're like, oh, hey, that's TerrorVision. Or you can see the title and it just jumps right into your head like, oh yeah, hey, that's the one with the goofy eyeball on the cover.
Oh yeah. I will say that the cover art gives it more of a, kind of makes you think you're going to see something a little bit more serious, because I was surprised how tongue-in-cheek this film ended up turning out to be, because it was really like, I mean, they played up this again, like you said, it is a beer and popcorn film, but it is also a very, very much a horror comedy. This isn't like they're not playing this straight, they're playing it with the comedy angle all the way. And another thing I wanted to mention too about this film was, it seems like one of the things that they stopped doing in the 80s, making sort of a connection to horror hosts. And here we got I think I was thinking of Fright Night. We've got Peter Vincent as the horror host, and, Charlie watching the show. And I know there's more than just Fright Night that have a horror host as part of the storyline. But TerrorVision has a horror host, and it's this Medusa character, she's kind of like an Elvira, like more of a cynical, sinister Elvira, with the big boobs type thing. So I thought that was kind of cool.
It's funny, when I was watching this the other day and my wife happened to be watching it with me, and when the Medusa character is first introduced, the grandfather is the one who's like, oh, watch this, I love this movie, or whatever. And then she comes on and he's like, what does he say? Look at those hooters, or look at those jugs. or something like that.
Right.
And I jokingly told my wife, I was like, well, I guarantee you that's going to come up on the show when we record in a couple of days. And sure enough, Medusa had the giant knockers, if you will.
Yes, she did. Yeah, it was kind of a weird film. I mean, like, they used a lot of this splatter effects and like goo, and it's like this really bizarre. I don't know. It's like every time the monster kills somebody, you don't really see blood, so to speak. It was like almost like he like drains them of liquids, of like water or something. Like
yeah,
water.
I don't know. I was trying to when we were watching it, I was trying to figure out what that was. If that was just like corn syrup without the dye in it, maybe, and so like maybe saving a little bit of money because like you said, it's just like it's just like snot or something. Like, ugh, what is that?
Yeah, and then they leave like what's left of their remains is basically just goo and slime and eyeballs, and it was very weird. And the monster actually kind of was funny because it kind of had sort of a similarity to me. It reminded me of the monster from The Deadly Spawn.
Mm.
Just because of the the rows of teeth. I mean, it was more of a cheesier version of that, even though the Deadly Spawn monster was pretty cheesy too. But it was like this very. He was obviously like a giant rubber puppet, basically. The weird thing about this film was like, and they even mention it, like they mentioned E.T. in this film. And it's sort of like they kind of played on that a little bit. Like, what if E.T. was this grotesque monster and, that killed people, but he also had like a soft side. And I think they tried to kind of play with like, I don't know how to explain it, but like to make it more like a kid-friendly looking monster, but at the same time, it sort of turned into this more gruesome thing as well. It was very much like if you took that monster out and put it on display, and like you had to somebody asked you, what era did this monster come from? It's so easily, the first thing you would say is, oh yeah, that was from the 80s.
Oh, right. Yep. Yeah. The whole movie overall, the feeling that I always get from this is this to me always feels like a cross between John Carpenter's The Thing, E.T., but then set in a Cyndi Lauper video.
That's such a good example. Yeah, I would see a little bit of... did you ever see The Explorers?
Yeah. Yep.
Do you remember the end when you like see the aliens and all that? It kind of reminded me of the end of that, too.
Yeah, The Explorers, that's the one where they... where the kid... Is The Explorers the one where they take the tilt-a-whirl cart and then they turn that into a spaceship and they go up and then they get sucked into the ship of the brother and sister?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. That's the one I was thinking of then, yep.
Yeah, this definitely has the same vibe as that film, too. I mean, obviously this one's a horror film, but it's got the same, like, at least the last 10 minutes of that film reminded me of this. So, which again, it goes back to the whole 80s thing. So if you're looking for an 80s beer and popcorn film, this is totally up your alley.
Yeah, and that's another one, too. The Explorers, when you're talking about that, I mean, that whole movie, like, you're like, oh, cool. And probably back in the 80s, it was probably completely different. But, you're like watching this movie. I remember watching that movie as a kid and being like, oh, this is awesome. And then watching it as a grown-up and then be like, oh, yeah, this is pretty cool. I remember this. And then they get to that ship and then these, like, Muppet things come out and you're like, what the... Well, this kind of takes away from it a little bit. What the hell is this? Yeah,
it's so funny because, like, The Explorers, you're right. I never saw that back in the day. I saw that a few years back, and I remember watching it, and it was like, this is pretty good. This is kind of a cool throwback film. And then you get to the end, and it's like, where are we? What the hell just happened?
Yeah.
This is terrible.
Yeah, could you imagine, like, watching The Goonies, and then when... Sloth comes out, he's this like puppet like guy instead of like like pretty good makeup and stuff, and you'd be like, oh wait, that's fake, that takes away from it,
right?
But I wonder, like, back in the day, like in 1986, somebody was going to see TerrorVision at the theater, and then they were like, oh, ha ha ha, funny, and then they were like, oh my god, that monster's terrifying.
I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Yeah. Well, one thing too, definitely gotta bring up is the parents' choice of artwork throughout the house. I don't know if you took a look at some of the pictures that were up. That was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, again, I think that was complete like 80s stuff. I bet that you had people without kids that had that kind of pornographic paintings hanging up all over their house.
Yeah, that was funny. Now, who is that? Who is the actor that played the dad?
Well, there's a couple of guys in this movie that are
I did know I recognized him. He was in Child's Play too. He played the foster dad.
because him and then the guy that played OD, John Grease, he was in. Well, I mean, he still is. He's still making stuff, but I mean, he's one of those guys that's been in a bunch of stuff, But like, I don't think he's ever like really starred in anything, but he's still like out there making stuff. They're both kind of that, like we've talked about before, is like, oh, that guy.
Right. Yeah, Garrett Graham. That's the guy I'm thinking of. He's one of those guys that you've seen in a lot of stuff throughout the years. So, how are you going to review this or rate this one?
Well, I would give TerrorVision a giant thumbs up for sure. This, like I said, this is one of those movies that it's so bad, it's good. If you had to pick it apart, there is no positives you can give to this movie. But when you put it all together, you're like, oh man, that's so fun.
Yeah, it's funny because I was trying to think about how do I review this film. And I think I have to do 2 reviews for this. As a film itself, as a movie, I'm going to have to give this a huge thumbs down. I'm going to have to say it's probably one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. The acting, the special effects, just a terrible film. But if you do like a double feature with like maybe Ghoulies 2 or something like that, and you've got enough beer and popcorn to get you through, then I'm going to have to give it, for a beer and popcorn film, I will give it a thumbs up because it definitely, categorize that's the perfect category for this film.